Hey, Bowie Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report. We just kicked around crunch time and the Celtics lost in overtime in Game 4 to the Sixers that tied this series. Josue Pavon's here. Let's talk about Jaylen Brown, who started this game so strong again. Another 20-point performance from him. And you're looking back on this game and wondering if they could get him more involved late. No shots in overtime for Brown. 3 in the fourth quarter, all from 3. He finishes 1 for 3 in that frame. So he gets asked about it late after the game, similar to Game 1 where he finished with just 10 shots. He had this to say.
Jaylen, you had 3 shots in the fourth quarter, not in overtime. How do you become more active in the offense, especially down the stretch?
I guess I got to demand the ball a little bit more. I thought good things happened when I had it in my hands, but I thought our offense was okay. I thought we chipped away, we made big time shots, we got great looks all game long, and we just came up short in the end.
What needs to change about the way you get involved in the offense? Because you've been able to have a lot of success over your career in the offense.
I'm not sure how to answer what needs to change. I'm not sure. I just think that we just need to continue to execute, continue to emphasize, what's working, and I think that will carry us over. I think we had great moments in this game. I think that we had great looks offensively. I think I can insert myself at times more into the game, but we just got to be ready for the next one.
CLNS Media's Celtics coverage is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win.
So I don't know how else you would want him to answer that other than, I got to demand the ball and be aggressive in that spot. But it speaks to a number of things here. One, of course, the conversation we always have about the connection between he and Jason Tatum, the organization of this team's offense, which goes back to the coaching, and Brown himself and how he views his role here, because he's, of course, talked all year about how he's sacrificing and how he's capable of more.
Yeah, like I said at the very beginning of the video, he's been the MVP for this team. I'm not trying to say he's the MVP of the league. Obviously, that belongs to Joel Embiid, but that's who he's been for this team. And I feel like the way the style of the offense is for the Celtics, it just doesn't. There's no room for let's get touches for Tatum, let's draw plays for Jaylen Brown. You just have to sort of find yourself in the flow of that offense, and that's what Jaylen has done. You look at particular games where he sort of disappears in the middle quarters or at least in the second half, and there's no coincidence that a lot of those situations, or a lot of them in those same games, are when Tatum's offense started flowing, and I think that was the case in this one. Tatum really got going in that second half after going scoreless throughout most of the first. He did a really good job of being aggressive and getting to the rim, getting to the free throw line, and just getting his offense going in that way. And I felt like when you couple two things together, whether it is Jaylen Brown having to defend James Harden and chase him around, and the way the Celtics offense was flowing without Jaylen being in the middle of that, he sort of gets left out. But the Celtics have to figure out a way to get him involved, whether it's just setting him up or him being aggressive enough to demand the ball. And I don't see him doing the latter. That's just not who he is. He says he should, and when he looks back on situations like this, he's like, man, we have to figure that out. But I just don't think that's what the team does. That's just not who that hasn't been the culture of this team. But in the playoffs at this level, I would like to see that happen more often. I would like to see Joe Mazzulla figure out a way to impose his will and to let these guys know that they have to find spots for Jaylen, whether it's in the last 3 minutes of the game or one of the final possessions where you're having the Philadelphia 76ers really double down on Tatum, and he has that open to hit either a big shot or draw up a play where he's getting to the free throw line or getting to the rack.
I asked Jason how they set him up more. Have they talked about it? He says it depends game to game.
Right.
He sort of went that route instead of
depending on what the defense is giving you. You have to. It all depends on that, right?
And it's read and react, as you said.
Exactly.
So they're not just feeding a guy a ball. And we've had this conversation back to Brad Stevens, the hot hand. You get away from a guy. They just don't run offense like that. But you do know Jason's going to get the ball, and the guards are going to get the ball late. That's sort of that hierarchy. So can you flip that? Last game they did that early to get Brown his looks. it's late games where he's off the ball, and he had a comment earlier in the series about how ineffective he is when he's stashed in the corner, and I generally agree with that. I love how at points in this series they've made him a cutter. You know, game 2 where Tatum's in foul trouble, they put him as a cutter. He made plays out of that position. That might have been his best game of the playoffs. So I agree with him that the ball in his hands is a good thing for this offense. I guess my question is he setting himself up to get the ball? We talked about that in the bubble. I look at the numbers, and Tatum is passing to him 9 times a game. So I think at least statistically you can't look at Tatum, and we'll see what that number is from this game specifically, and say it's on Tatum to get him the ball more, because so far in these playoffs he has. I don't know if you can blame anything for this generally. This might just be the reality of playing with 2 stars. The only one's going to have the ball, and on this team it's Tatum.
Yeah, I mean, again, it all depends on how the game is going, and because Tatum had the hot hand and he was ramping up as the lead was dwindling, and if they pull ahead, you wonder in those moments, is that when you empower Jaylen? But again, that's just not what this culture has been about all season long. It's not what Josue has been about. And I think it's more important for him to get in those situations and try to find Jaylen and set things up. But again, he's never going to be the guy to force the issue. But maybe that changes. The series is now tied 2-2, going back to Boston. Again, I still believe Jaylen's been the MVP of this team. What he's been doing on the defensive end more so has really been the reason why. I don't even think is relatively close, to be honest with you.
Right, and I love that.
Yeah.
He knows they need to go over. So that's the question right now. Why didn't that happen as much in this game? Brown thought they made the screen actions earlier in the clock and higher, and that got the Sixers rolling downhill. So that's something you can easily fix. And we know the small picture implications here is they'll probably look for Brown more often here.
Yeah.
But is there anything big picture to these comments?
A little bit. I mean, I think there is, because if you're his teammate, you're wondering the same thing. Well, why did that happen again? This is the second time in this series where you feel like Jaylen just didn't get the ball enough, or didn't get at least more than 3 attempts throughout the entire fourth quarter and overtime.
Yeah,
so,
but even his comfort in his role in Boston, because he keeps talking about this. Second time in this series.
Yeah, look,
the interviews from earlier.
Honestly, if we're talking about Jaylen's future, I just think there's no way to really paint that picture until we see how this run ends. It really does come down to that. We'll see how he responds, but overall, yeah, I mean, that's always going to be a talking point. I think it's fair to say even now that I don't see any way where he's going to be that number 1 alpha, and I think that's the big chunk of the conversation. Is he comfortable with staying in Boston for another 3-4 years as the number 2? Is he okay with that? Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but again, it all really depends on how this thing ends. If the Celtics go to the finals and win the championship, I think that really helps his chances of staying. If they don't, then he's going to have to really make that decision. Does he want to stick around and keep fighting to win a championship, or does he want to start somewhere else, somewhere fresh? But I don't think that has anything to do with how his approach to the series or to the playoffs. Just everything that's been going on with the Celtics team and who they are, again, the culture and what they do, it would be really surprising to see them switch things up, but I do think it's worth considering, and I think they'll do it organically, honestly. When as a team, they look back and say, man, maybe we can do something to get to empower Jaylen, to get him the ball, down the stretch. But again, I see it happening organically that way before I ever see Jaylen speaking up and saying, hey, give me the ball. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and it needs to happen. Everyone needs to come together. No point in a blame game here. Tatum, Brown, Missoula need to come together and find balance in that.
And it's not like the series is over, right? It's like the sky's falling, but it's going to get harder, right?
It's going to get harder, and you put yourself in position to lose this series now. It's a best of 3, smaller sample size as far as the shooting advantage for the Celtics goes, and this crunch time issue lingers, and we talked about that in our last video.
It's not going away.
Go check that out on Celtics All Access, CLNS Media, for all the post-game reaction, including Jaylen Brown's, and just another weird finish in this game where Brown gets lost in the offense. What's the reason for that? Let us know below. I'm Bobby Manning. Josue Pavon one more time from Philadelphia. We will be back here now in a 2-2 series.
Yes, Game
6 on Thursday. Game 2 in Boston.
As Ahmed rolls his eyes.
On Tuesday.
Ahmed, we got to get some ice for that lip after what happened at the Phillies game.
Yeah.
Foul ball. But, maybe that won't happen next time. We'll see.
This has been the Garden Report. Sixers win Game 4.
The Garden Report is brought to you by BetterHelp. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/garden today to get 10% off your first month. This edition of the Garden Report is also brought to you by Athletic Greens. Visit athleticgreens.com/garden for a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase.